much like NPS, I needed to augment NPS with a transactional survey to get real about what the customers were feeling. Similar to the customer health score, I needed to go beyond that to really now say, we're confronted a lot of time. In any relationship you're confronted with, what's your value? What are you bringing into this relationship?
Before we start, I'd like to remind everyone, subscribe to our YouTube channel for all the great videos that we produce on customer success.
Hello, my customer success friends. 𝘧𝘪𝘚𝘱𝘦𝘚 here for CSM Practice, the customer success consulting firm. Today I have Chris Singh, Global Head of Customer Success Management at SAP. Hello, Chris.
Hi, Red.
Specifically today, I'm going to approach the topic of maximizing customer value and being customer-centric. Now, most companies have a health score. Most customer success teams develop a health score, and I talk a lot about it in my podcasts and webinars that I do throughout the year, how a customer health score in its designation is a very internal type metric. Is my customer healthy? Meaning, is it going to churn or not? But SAP took the step forward and actually developed what we call a value scoring methodology. What is the main purpose of that score, Chris?
Great, thank you, Red. It was really important for us to go beyond an insight of a customer at the health level. What we were finding is that the health score was giving you an indication of the customer. So you could get a green score, and when you had a QBR with the customer, you find out they're dissatisfied, or you could get a green score, and at renewal time, God forbid, you find out that the customer is not renewing. So, I got to thinking that beyond just the indication that the health score gives you, how do we get deeper in terms of quantifying early enough what value we were delivering for the customer? Because there is the experiential side, which means the customer is really pleased and happy about a person they're working with or the experience of it. But that only goes so far in driving the outcome and goals of that business. And if you don't do that, you're dead in the water. So I've often found that the health score was green, and at renewal time, the customer was still faced with a non-renewal, which meant that something in that health scoring. Now, you can interrogate the health scoring all you want, and there's all kinds of tweaks and things that you can do to health scoring. It's great to get the insight because that gives you certain kinds of specific plays you can make with regards to the customers. But if you don't understand that what you're managing to as a quantifiable value, then you're in trouble. Because quite often the people who work for our customers, like the admins, they have to prove that they understand the solution that they bought from SAP, and they too can realize and maximize the value. So how do you arm them with argumentations going back to say, look, we wanted to recruit faster, we are recruiting faster, some of the best talents in the world. We wanted to close our books faster. We're closing our books faster than anybody with financial systems anywhere. And we're doing it because of what the solution capabilities and the services that are accompanying that solution gives to you. So we wanted to definitively answer that question on value.
So the value scoring essentially solves a couple of objectives. One, creating a consistent score that's almost always true, versus the flaky health score that we usually see where there's a lot of false positives or false negatives. The other objective is to essentially provide the customer or the admin that works with you at the client side the tools and the empowerment to showcase how well they understand the solution that the customer has invested in you and how much value they've actually gotten. So you're almost creating a laundry list of all the use cases that they could get with SAP and score whether or not they're getting that value. This way they can even be held accountable. Why aren't they going towards all the use cases and objectives that they could possibly get?
Absolutely. You're spot on. If you think of customer success, it's a science, right? We all know it's a science, that it's very prescriptive in its nature, that it's predicated on a couple key things that the customer must do on their end. They must have the right cloud culture. They must have tight governance around their businesses. They must make sure that they're consuming learning and education so they can enable their employees, that they can consume things like loyalty-based initiatives that can expand their customers into becoming more loyal. So all of those things, how do you consume it effectively? based on the assets we're giving to you as a provider. That was one of the key things for me. We got to thinking and we said, you know what, we're providing these circular things that we know contributes to customer success definitively, right? You know, if learning is not a big part or a cornerstone of what the customer does, there is no way they can enable their employees to be successful in whatever solution it is. So if that is such a cornerstone, how are you quantifying and measuring how the customers are consuming your learning content? We got down to the level of looking at, we have the Learning Hub embedded in SAP Preferred Success as an example. Within that success brand, we make sure that we can authenticate how well and how much the customers were using it. This way, from a scorecarding perspective, we can go back and say, hey, there's one principal tenement that you're missing from consuming and you're under consuming, because quite often people think that only the provider like us is responsible for success. And as you and I know, it's a two-way street. So we have to also keep our customers honest, not only in things like learning, but we have business process optimizations, business process expansions that customer could take use of. Are they taking use of it? And if they are not, at the scorecard during QBR time, you can openly discuss, hey, I'm seeing a red or a green or a yellow in there. What can we do to enable you now to consume and drive those expansion of business process? Mobile is a classic example. You know, you can do so much with mobile or IRPA, where you do robotics process automation, right? Where you can look at that and say, hey, why are you not taking use of some of these assets to automate repetitive tasks so you can lower your TCO? In those kinds of cases, if we're seeing under consumption in those business process optimization and expansion, we can also go back and have that conversation in a quantifiable way. So we get out of this feeling, and I feel this way, or it's very subjective, to a quantifiable, objective way of managing value together, because it is a two-way street.
Okay, so for those who are interested in doing a value scoring methodology and adopt it to their customer success organization, once you've developed the metric, sounds like for our high-touch customers, the CSM is actually exposing the metric and working through it with the customers during quarterly business reviews with clients?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And for any organization out there, I think one of the good things is you have defined what you declare customer success asset. If those assets are not long tail and they're very purposeful, and you have the conviction that those assets will make a customer successful, why are you not quantifying the customer usage of such assets and replaying it back to them? It's that simple, right? Of now looking at that objectively. One of the elements is a little bit complex because you really have to study usage at the business process level and come back to the customer and say, you know, at the usage level, somebody who's like-minded in your industry is using 30% more than you. You know, can we give some thoughts about what does that 30% mean to you as a business and what you would like to do? So I think all of those things combined. If you have that conviction that the assets you're providing will hit the mark for the customers, you should measure and quantify usage back and replay it back to the customer.
So it sounds like as you were developing this value scoring methodology, you were highly dependent on usage data in terms of just getting access to it as a very first step, then defining what are the assets or the key assets that you provide to customers. Once you identify those, key those as events, feed them into some sort of a system, and then crunch the data to showcase how do these customers benchmark against each other.
Yeah, no, absolutely. We leverage what we know is industry best. And then you get the data to show you actual insight into how customer X is doing. So now you can validate and vet how they stack up against industry best. And what are the delta gaps in between? And what plays can be instituted to get them from X to Y. I think that's really important because too often we use insight, and that was my challenge. I shouldn't say problem, but challenge with the health score. It may give you certain kinds of indication. It may even say, look, here's a play or a trigger based on certain kinds of health score. But how do you know that your actions have now hit a very prescriptive mark in the area of value? Because not only about the experiential side, but it's also about the value realization side. And I think in SAP case, we have a good fortune of leveraging Qualtrics to give us indication on the experience side. Other companies use similar survey, experiential sort of assessment, but very few now go on that value management. I think it's misunderstood and it's omitted from most companies' play because some people try to get, I think, a little bit over engineering in how they put it together. We took a simple premise, which is, look, we're delivering all these great assets. Let's check and validate whether the customers are using it. But in order to really put it into production, what we did, we wanted to make sure that we were hitting the mark. So what we did, we once we generated what we said was a value score for a customer, we went against the NPS for that specific customer. Again, leveraging Qualtrics, we were able to see at the customer level, their satisfaction level and what they rated us. We then did a blind study of now saying, let's take that scoring, a value scoring independently, compare it to the NPS score or the promoter score or CSAT score. And then I took it one step further. I said for customers we know who have low usage, most people quantify usage as per license. We needed to go deeper than that. We wanted to go at the business process level to see what people were using within the business process. When we quantified the score on the value score, and we looked the NPS score and corroborated that with usage, 100% of the time, they all lined up in low. Meaning that
the NPS, the higher the usage, the lower the usage, the lower the NPS?
Lower the NPS, lower the independent value corroborated that. So we saw the value score being low. Mm-hmm. We then looked at the NPS, it was low. And then when we looked at usage, it was low. So it was perfect triangle of the Bermuda Triangle, if you will, of what we need to do to make sure that those three quadrants are hit. Conversely, what we have also done, as you saw the value score go up, I can almost now with certainty say, I will bet you that customer NPS would be in around this ballpark, or I will bet you that their usage will be over 50-something% as a measure. And sure enough, when we corroborated that, it all lined up on every single case that we vetted it against, both on the positive side and the lower end of the spectrum, conclusively, without fail.
So there's the proof with 440,000 customers. If you can show a correlation between low value and low NPS scores, I think that not only validates that what customers really want, they want high value from your systems, but it also double clicks on the usage of NPS score in general, because I think there was a lot of debate whether NPS should be part of, a health score for a customer. I think that really suggests that the NPS could be a leading indicator for low value that the customer might be perceiving as getting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do think, though, that if you augment NPS with almost at a transactional level survey from the customers, you can get much more granular in terms of certain kinds of insight that an NPS gives you a macro view of the entire company's performance. And for you to double click to go down, sometimes it's very difficult from NPS. And I think that's the biggest knock in the customer success industry on NPS, right? Because for this person who's sitting there orchestrating a service or a value to customers, down low, they're saying, well, what is my contribution to that NPS at a micro level? That's a macro rollup. What the transactional survey does, it's a great way of getting actual insight on a very specific area of service you're rendering. So you mentioned 440,000 customers. Not all of those customers are cloud. This is really geared for a cloud customer that has preferred success as an example that we go after to really now look at that and see how we can drive out certain kinds of behavior and certain kinds of things on our side and their side. And it was important for me to vet that because much like NPS, I needed to augment NPS with a transactional survey to get real about what the customers were feeling. Similar to the customer health score, I needed to go beyond that to really now say, we're confronted a lot of time in any relationship you're confronted with. What's your value? What are you bringing into this relationship? And if you go on task base, you're dead. Well, we did this, 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 and this. That conversation is dramatically different if you say, did you know 40,000 people use the learning system and you roll out an enablement session for 100,000 people across your organization where you got the training from us, the learning materials from us, and you were able to dispense that and touch 100,000 people, being enabled within a month or within 2 weeks of us deploying that. That's a fundamentally different discussion. If you were able to close your books, you acquired several companies, you have different company code from a financial perspective that needs to close at month end or period end, quarter end. You need to bring those company codes together from a financial perspective. It was slow and cumbersome. You leveraged one of our business outcome checks where we went in, interrogate your business process and say, you're not doing X, Y, and Z correctly. Here's how you optimize it. We give them prescriptive guidance on optimizing it. And now you're seeing a 15-20% faster processing time. You can equate that back to ROI, TCO, inclusive of revenue generation and cost reduction in many ways. So that's where you start quantifying and mining for those quantifications that you can come back to customers. The other thing we changed, some of the outcome that we were giving customers were very almost technical. You know, we will do this check, we will do this success check for you. We flipped that around and we said, no more of that. We will do only business-oriented check that results in something very specific to you getting back. For example, if your recruitment drive is taking way too long, the campaigns you're running is not the greatest. We want a success check not only to identify that, but to come back and say, here is what you need to do to affect a much better outcome than what you're seeing. So if you want to recruit 2,000 people in COVID times, rapid recruitment, and you need to spin something up, here's what we have done. Did you or did you not hire 2,000 people within a month? And you can now quantify that and say achievement accomplished. That was an objective, a business goal you had. It's quantified. And in that, I can't go into the explicit nature of the scorecarding, but those are where you now extrapolate the usage side on usage of your contents for customer success, plus this business outcome value-oriented KPI-driven goals. You marry them together and you have this value management framework and scoring that we can replay back.
Amazing. Sounds like you have transitioned your team from talking about feature function, support tickets, new releases, to actually talking about business outcomes, business goals, and provide them with a way to actualize value faster and then check the point doing a follow-up to actually understand whether or not they've obtained the goals that they wanted based on and implemented the designed roadmap that you've provided them with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think when you do get in front of customers and you do start having these discussions, you do see a different tone that those meetings take on. Because now it's undisputed in terms of what was delivered. Previously, it was, yeah, but you know, we're not getting that sense of what you're doing a lot of work, but we're not sure what it is you're doing. And we really want to get out of that. Similar to, you know, the age-old discussion of, I like my CSM, but I'm not renewing. So likability was high, renewal was low. So how do you infuse likability with experience and you add value as an overlay and quantify that back? Because in one way or another, this may sound not too good, but human beings, we're always being measured, right? As a CSM, you're measured on your success, personal, what have you done for the customer? What is the customer saying about you? We even have maybe potentially in some countries, transactional survey about your CSM. On the experience side, we're always checking. But at renewal time, you're told, I like my CSM, but I'm not renewing. Then the question of value was never answered and wasn't equitable to your measurement of the human capital side. So, you know, we had to go through this piece to augment the value side with experience side.
Okay, here's my recap. The value scoring is a tool designed for the CSMs to leverage with customers to assess what are the areas and outcomes that the customer might be interested in doubling down on? Then having a discussion around why is this important for them? What are the outcomes that they actually want to achieve by optimizing a certain process or getting to a certain larger goal? Then providing them with a realization roadmap on how to realize that value, following up to ensure that they've actually done it and whether they achieve the outcomes that they have designed for themselves. For those of you who are listening and want to develop a value scoring for yourself, sounds like to do it in a scalable manner or to even infuse some value discussions, it would behoove you to have access to usage data so that you can start benchmarking a certain customer with how do your best-in-class customers using that same asset or feature that you guys provide. And what I'm hearing is that it's being used to, one, identify areas where there's opportunities, and also share it with your customers so that they can have an aha moment and articulate what that means to them.
Yeah, perfectly said. Absolutely. The only one thing I would add to that is you perfectly recap. Value changes over time that the customer have. And in some cases, the customer does not know what they need, because if you think of the cloud, the speed of innovation means they don't know what's coming. It's incumbent upon you to also share to that customer what is coming as new business opportunities for them to take use of in those release cycles that are coming. So one of the things we augmented with that was this key feature analysis that also looked at each releases and some of the key features that are coming. So we can prescriptively tell them about business value they should expand to. It's not only about customer driven, because quite often, again, we always go into this thinking customer will initiate the value of what outcomes they're seeking. It's incumbent upon us to bring some of these new generation outcomes to the customer and ask them if they'd like to participate in it. So we have also augmented that side of it. So even the path in which they also, where we're evolving to, it's to see how many customers are actually now taking use as part of a value measure of those new opportunities to expand on business, new business process, new optimizations, and so forth.
That's brilliant. So you have a past looking with the benchmark, and you also have forward-looking value opportunities by working with the product team and really understanding what are these new features, why were they developed, what is the use case, and then showcasing it to the customer, not as, hey, here's the latest feature and function list, but here are the next outcomes that you can achieve with us, Mr. Customer. What would that mean to you if you were able to do so? And then create what we literally call it in customer success a success plan, which is the plan on how to actualize value or additional value with you.
Yes, absolutely. And all of that is firmly committed to the success plan, for sure.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Chris. Really appreciate your time. And I think this is such an innovative way to structure the conversation around value with customers, and also allow your CSMs to focus on priorities around outcomes to talk to with clients and additional opportunities for value discussion, so you don't always talk about the same things.
Yes, quantifying the value, super important, as well as the experience, for sure.
Stay committed, subscribe to our YouTube video, turn on notifications so you don't miss awesome videos like this. I'll see you at the next video.